if you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody. Who do you want? Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Mega power, yeah.
We got it for you.
No! We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling, dealing.
Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Welcome to Talk 'em in the Building, a podcast where we break down the art of the pro wrestling promo, where we talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. My name is Adalid. I'm out here on the West Coast, as always, joined by my homies, my compadres, my pro wrestling aficionados out in the ATL. I got Greg joining us here, the resident historian of Talk 'em Pod. What's up, Greg?
What's going on?
Regale us with a story today. I'm just kidding. And I got Adrian, the man with the plan, with the whole network. What's up, Adrian?
Chilling, man. Chilling.
And look, this is all about your experience today. So, gentlemen, we're going to dig into this in the building report today. And Adrian got the pleasure of joining One Raven for a upcoming documentary that's maybe potentially already out. But if this is your first time with us, this is going to be a little bit of a special episode. But check out our back catalog, intothebuilding.com. We have all kinds of content, shorts, full episodes, short form episodes, everything you can think about the pro wrestling promo. And of course, I was very fortunate that I get to host a show with my friends over here. And this is something we genuinely love to do. We love pro wrestling, and we love the promo because talk 'em in the building, like what's talking you into spending your hard-earned money. But before we get into this in the building report, I want to throw a question out there, gentlemen, because it's out there, it's out in the ether, it's out in society at this point. There is this idea of how do you make stories better in professional wrestling? How do you make even the promo better? And we've seen some good ones, we've seen some tepid ones lately, this week specifically. And there's this new idea about AI and what role will it play, not just in the future of storytelling in pro wrestling, but just storytelling in society, right? And and everything that means. So I'm gonna start with you, Adrian. I'll pose this question: What do you think AI is going to play the role in the future as we think of, what it means for pro wrestling? Is there going to be a place for it? Is it going to be mechanical, or are we going to start seeing it pull at the heart of what we think the promo is?
Well, that's the thing, because, my guy Meltzer came out with the rumor that WWE had hired someone to specifically work with AI, and it ran rampant that it was dealing with creative. So, of course, the internet, I have my ear to the streets, and, we were all freaking out saying, look, man, we're about to have AI promos, AI storylines. This is whack, da-da-da. But the more I think about it, guys, AI has already been heavily in use by a lot of these companies, a lot of these wrestling companies in particular, because that's what we're talking about. I know it triggers a lot of people when it comes to the heavy usage of AI. And I do agree with that, because it's nothing like the human touch, the human element of art and creativity. I get all of that. However, I do also acknowledge that AI is a useful tool. So I'm really at this. I hate to be the on the fence person on this, but I'm really on the fence, because I do see, the positives of using it as a tool, as something to assist you, or something maybe like a checks and balances deal. But also, once we go into, okay, all we're using is AI, literally everything is run through AI, it loses some soul. And I hate that. And I hate that that's potentially what we may experience. I hope that's not the case when it comes to WWE, AEW, any of these companies. I would hate to hear that we're solely depending on a system or a program to decide what we consume and what we like.
Yeah. And then it goes beyond what you even think of like a focus group, right? This is
Right.
a machine telling you what you think you might like.
Right.
Greg, you experienced AI. I think we've all used AI in our daily lives
Definitely.
at some point at this point. But when it comes to something that we love, that we enjoy as a pastime, what does that make you think about the future of how it's going to impact wrestling?
So it don't bother me one bit.
Mm.
Here's how I look at it. Let's go back to the Attitude Era. We have Vince Russo come up with all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Prior to him coming to Nitro, prior to him going to WCW, coming up with all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had a filter of Vince McMahon going, dude, I need this and I need that, and let me take a little bit of this. Oh, you did this with the New Age Outlaws. Oh, you put these two together. Let's do. Oh, wow, Crash TV over here,
Mm.
and then he put it together. What's the difference? You're just getting it from a different source. Now, it's what do you do with that source? Do you take it word for word?
Right.
And let's just use Russo for an example. Now he moves over to WCW. He has all these ideas coming out of a person, not a machine, but he's coming out with no filter. And what happens? Crash and burn. If you don't put that filter on top of it, if you don't put somebody to have checks and balances, not just on AI, but on anybody who's doing this creative, we don't get the bloodline storyline.
Right.
Somebody came up with this storyline, said, okay, this is where we're going to go with it. And then we got to sprinkle a little bit of Cody in here. We got to sprinkle some Sami Zayn. Heyman probably said, hey, you know what? Let me do this over here. Oh, and Michael Hayes probably threw his little 2 cents, and Bruce and whoever else.
Sure.
If you have that, it's still it's a team.
Right. It's collaborative effort. Yeah.
And so it's no different than probably how we use AI today. I use it on a regular basis to go get ideas and to stimulate my brain, to take me places that I'm not thinking about. It's very similar to a musical artist, maybe a rap artist going listening to country and going, you know what, I'm not going to make a country album, but I can get some things off of here that is going to stimulate me down a certain path. So that's why I just look at it's a tool. It's just a tool to get you somewhere else and to help you stay focused. It's the evolution of this business. There was a time, and it can be used as a guide. If you follow it word for word, you do lose some of that heart and soul.
Right.
And in what we're talking about, the profession we love, professional wrestling, if you have a scripted 100% match that step by step by step by step that doesn't care about the fans, doesn't care about the emotion in the ring, and you may sit back and go, that was cool, but I had no connection to it.
Right.
But then you flip it over to one of those matches that's like, yeah, we got as Austin used to always say, I got a little fishbone, and we're gonna add all the color and everything else with it, and go up and down and take these guys on a ride. And you have those masters of that art.
Right.
They may have that fishbone that they got from wherever, but now they take you on a ride, and they're the ones who made all the money. They're the ones who are seen as the greatest of all time. Whether it's a Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat to this day holds up. Steamboat compares that to the Macho Man match and doesn't like the Macho Man match because Macho Man had it scripted from moment one till the end. Where he said, I went out there with Flair, we didn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
And masterpieces, right? Austin, masterpieces. Cody, going to Roman. You start hearing a lot of these things where they're doing these things even today, where it's not. They're listening to the crowd. They're changing little pieces, and they're doing different things. So where you get your creative is cool. How do you color in the lines or outside the lines and make it that better product? I don't care if it comes from AI. I wish, and in all honesty, there's some companies out there who need it. Because at the end of the day, none of these storylines are original.
Yeah, for sure.
They're different characters.
For sure.
They're different people, and there's different emotions here and there. But at the end of the day, they're all the same.
Yeah, we borrowed from other mediums for this.
It's good versus evil.
Yeah.
It's turning on each other. It's getting back together. It's all these different things. How do I make it different? And if I have to reach out to AI to do it, I'm cool with that.
And I'll argue it this way, kind of, I think I am still more of the idea that it is a tool, right? And it's going to be a tool in every aspect of living. You can't be scared of it. You can't ignore it. You have to embrace it and at least have an understanding of what it is.
Yeah.
But to your point, if we're thinking about production, right, from a production end, to me, this is going to be a very useful, and almost see it as kind of a modern script supervisor that can keep track of storylines, can keep track of characters. If somebody goes injured, how are you going to introduce them? Because let's be real, even everybody's human. You're going to forget things naturally. You're going to forget who's on the roster. You're going to forget, who interacted with who. I think for that end, it will help keep things straight. But to your point, it doesn't take away from the art, because you still have human beings who have to out there and perform and elicit an emotion and listen to the crowd and pivot, because the crowd isn't. You're not going to have AI with you out there on your phone trying to listen to the crowd and figure out for an emotion. So it's fascinating times, but I think at the heart of the matter is it's going to be this other piece that we just add to the toolbox, literally. Anyway, just something to think about as we dig into this. So these are some of the kind of conversations we have for you listeners. If this is your first time joining us, we do talk about a little bit about the modern stuff and current topics. But again, we're going to dive into the building report tonight. And Adrian, you got a really unique experience very recently in a beautiful venue, by the way. I got a chance to see some of the pictures from it. But
nice.
In the building report, for those of you that are new, we break down the live wrestling fan experience, even though this is not a wrestling show, but that he attended. It's actually going to be a movie and a little bit of was it a Q&A, Adrian, as well?
It was a
Q&A.
Yep. Meet and greet.
Meet and greet.
Doc, and then a Q&A afterwards. It was awesome.
Awesome. And this is, of course, we're talking about a special screening of Nevermore, The Raven Effect, with Raven himself in attendance and part of the festivity. So this was taking place at the historic Plaza Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, when the longest running independent theaters, I think, in the city, right?
The longest in the state, actually.
Longest in the state. Wow. Okay. Even more than that. So, Adrian, let's get into it. Let's set the scene a little bit. You're in the Plaza Theater, and as we go through these segments, we're going to talk about merch. We're going to talk about the venue, the food, the production, the merch, and then we'll come up with the last grade. We're rating this A through F, like school, basically. But thinking back to this, you're in this classic Atlanta spot for film, for fandom. We got the crowd buzzing. Sounds like it was a good crowd. So let's start with this first question. Who talked you into the building? What convinced you to come out to this one? Nostalgia, curiosity, a chance to meet Raven? What was it?
Well, what ultimately talked me into the building was Raven. I didn't know he was going to be in attendance, so that was a cool element of this whole event. It was advertised that DDP was supposed to be there. And it was under my impression, and I know Greg and I were talking about the event. I was like, man, that's cool that DDP will be there to talk about Raven. But Raven lives close by Atlanta. I don't know why he wouldn't be there, but maybe he just didn't want to be there. Who talked me into the building ultimately was Raven. He's been one of my favorite wrestlers. I know all of us, we were fans in one form or another of ECW and of Raven in general. And I just wanted to learn more about the guy. I wanted to see if this documentary was going to teach me more about him, which it did, and give further insight on certain parts of his life. So that's what talked me and my wife into the building. It was Raven.
That's cool. Yeah. And I mean, that was something that was new to me. I heard something about the documentary, and then I think they went full force with the advertising and the marketing. So, something that I definitely want to check out. But as we get into the ratings here, you're going to grade the whole experience, A through F, and, talking about, what you enjoyed, what you like, or, a lot of times when we talk about wrestling shows, also what fell flat for you, what didn't connect.
For sure.
And the first thing we're going to look at here is the venue.
Right.
How did the Plaza Theater hold up for this special event? What was something you can tell us about it?
Well, I'll give the Plaza Theater a B+, and that's once again, like you said, it's Georgia's longest run independently owned movie theater in the state. It's a classic venue. Looks like an old school movie theater. I'll put some of the pictures on this episode, but you walk in, you get that super old school movie theater feel. The smell of popcorn hits you. The walls are covered in old school movie posters, which are awesome. In fact, they had a poster to the left as soon as you walked in of a recent showing of Blade. They were playing it in 35mm, and they made like a custom. It looked like an old school, like Grindhouse version of Blade movie poster. It was super cool. But all that aside, the seats were awesome. They just renovated in the past couple years. It's just it's a really beautiful venue. And I'm really glad that even though they're independently owned, that they were able to survive 2020 when a lot of businesses independently owned and not backed by big corporations were pretty much shutting down, especially in that industry. So I'm glad that it's still around. It's a staple in my household. We actually had, my wedding weekend, we actually had a viewing of Purple Rain there for my family and my wife's family. So that theater is a big part of my life and my household. And I'm glad that they were the host of this documentary.
Adrian, so, part of the experience there, is also the crowd and, the energy the crowd brings. So talk a little bit about, who this brought out. Was this diehards, ECW diehards, casuals, or, maybe even just kind of the locals curious about what was going on at the Plaza Theater that day?
I'll definitely give the crowd an A, and I give them an A off of the simple reason because we had at least 4 people there. It was a full house for that theater, mind you, but there were at least 4 or 5 Raven cosplayers that were like really into it, including a boyfriend, girlfriend that were both Raven, and they took a cool picture. I'll put that up and show you guys in the chat. But you could tell that these were some ECW hardcores. I know it was a couple people that traveled from North Carolina to support and come down, so that was cool. And I mean, I definitely got to give them an A+ because at the end, when we had a Q&A, there were plenty of interesting questions and really cool questions. It wasn't just the boring, what's your favorite match? Like, it wasn't that kind of question. It was a little bit more in-depth and intimate, and I appreciate that. So I got to give the crowd A+, plus a couple of my buddies that I haven't seen in forever from independent wrestling shows. I ran into them, and it was great. It was like a little homecoming of sorts. So that was fun.
What was one of the good questions you heard, and like what did you respond to?
Okay, and I gotta shout out my guy David for this, because as soon as he asked this, I was like, holy shit, this is David. I haven't seen him in forever. David is he's Jewish, and he had a conversation with Raven about his favorite Jewish wrestlers, and asking Raven about, does he practice the religion or what are his thoughts? And Raven pretty much, he said as nicely as possible that he didn't believe in it. And he was like, I don't practice. I eat pork. I don't really conform and all that. But it was as nice of a conversation between two that were like, okay, I study and this is what I'm about. And whereas this guy's like, that's not my style, bro. But thanks for the question. It was a nice interaction. So I'll give
That's
them.
cool. At least something a little bit more personal for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you said, just not the typical question. It was like,
Absolutely.
what was like the 95 run CW?
Oh, a really good question. In fact, I'll even tell you this. One of the last questions was dealing with friends with addiction. Because in the documentary, it was a lot of talk about a lot of substance abuse and, how do you handle a friend who's going through those battles? How do you support them? How do you love them without being overbearing, without, that sort of thing? And it was a lot of great insight brought. So it was questions like that. It wasn't, bogus questions or whatnot, Chat GPT didn't come up with the questions.
I hope not. So, typically we talk about production, which is the next segment we'll cover here. This is a little bit of a loaded question because you could talk about the production of the actual event and, how it was produced. And if you want to get into the film too, you can. But I'll kind of leave it up to you.
Okay, so for production, I will give it a B-, and I will more so lean toward documentary and a few critiques of it. But first, I'll give some props to it. Very insightful, an extremely engaging documentary. It was 2 hours long, but they did a really good job of balancing the high points and the low points. A lot of documentaries, especially dealing with pro wrestling, they may start off high, but it's going to hit that low point and keep going negative and keep going. And with Raven's story and a lot of what we know of Raven, that could have easily been the case. But surprisingly, with this documentary, man, it was very balanced. It was high point, low point, high point, low point. So if you were a casual viewer or not an ECW fan, like my wife never watched ECW, she didn't know. She was engaged with it and she loved it. She loved what she was learning. And she was like, dude, I want to watch. I actually watched this stuff because that was her first time ever seeing Sandman crucified. Like they talked about that and gave insight on it. Or, the angle of Sandman's son, basically following the flock or following him. So it was stuff like that. That was really cool and engaging while also giving a really good insight on Raven. Those are good points. But when it comes to the critique of the production, it seemed like the mixing of the audio was off. There were a couple of points, and it was more than at least two, because if it was just two, I probably wouldn't even thought about it. But it was over 2 points where there were certain parts of the doc where you're bringing in an older clip and you don't adjust the audio where it's awkward. It sounds super loud while Raven's talking about something. And then a clip pops up and now the audio from that clip has overtaken whatever he's saying. So you don't even really hear what he's saying. And my wife even said it on the drive back. That was one of her immediate critiques. She was like, dude, it was cut great, but in terms of audio, there were times where it wasn't pleasant. So hopefully by the time it hits streaming and everything, they've made those adjustments. Maybe we were watching a screener version of it, but
rough cut maybe.
Yeah.
No, and I hope, the director, if it gets word, I'm sure he took some feedback. So you're right. Hopefully by streaming, they fix those odds and ends. The big part of going to any pro wrestling show, and in this case, something in person, is the merch. So, we I think the last time we did this Into the Building report, you were interviewing Bradley, and last time you went to he went to NXT, there was a concern that they didn't really bring out merch that was relevant to the show. So for this Raven show, was there good merch? Was there anything specific to the venue, to the event, to the film?
In terms of merch, I got to give it a C. And it's mainly driven because the Plaza had great merch for their venue. Make no mistake about it. They were old school logos. They were remind you of those old school, let's all go to the lobby ads or whatnot. They have those design shirts and they have that cool stuff. But for Raven, it was pretty much limited to his 8x10s, which I understand. Like, you know, you don't want to come with a whole bunch of shirts and 8x10s and all of that. But I maybe could they have had some Raven shirts there for him to sell? Sure. But he did have 8x10s and he was signing them. He was taking pictures. He was doing the meet and greet thing. So I'm not going to go too hard on this event when it comes to merch, but I will give it a C because it's heavily drawn by the merch from the Plaza Theater.
Yeah, that seems like a fair rating, you know, given that I guess you can get 8x10s anywhere, like at a con or something like that. But yeah, I'm assuming he had to bring something to make the fans go home happy. This is going to be maybe an obvious one, but we move on to concessions and your grade there.
Yeah.
All important question, but you know, it is a theater. So what were your expectations there?
I wasn't many expectations. I will give them credit for their bar selection. The Plaza does have a pretty extensive bar compared to other. I know more movie theaters are starting to move toward that bar focus element, but they've done a good job of updating their bar menu. So I will give them a B. Like, they got the staples down perfectly. Popcorn on point. They have the candy. They have the sodas. But the bar puts it over. I'll give them a B because of what they're carrying behind their bar.
Right on. Hopefully nobody got too overboard.
Nah, everyone's chill.
His background and everything. And then, you know, we move on to it's a bit of an obvious question again, is who stole the show? Obviously it's Raven. He is the man of the hour, but you also had the fans. I'm curious if the director said anything at this point. Who stole the show for the night?
Man, who stole the show? It had to be Raven. It had to be Raven. I will give an honorable mention to Lodi, who actually was in attendance and was on the panel as well. In fact, when I first got there, he was sitting to the side, and me and Lois were sitting chilling. And then I asked him, I was like, "Are you one of the moderators?" And then he chuckled, like he was like, "Have you been a Raven fan?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a Raven fan." And we were talking. And then before he got up, he was like, "You remember the guy who used to have the signed WCW?" And then as soon as he said, I was like, "Oh, what the hell?" And then he got up. He was like, "Well, I'll see you in there," or whatever. He was super nice. He was cool. He actually is the head trainer of a wrestling school there in North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte. Charlotte Flair was one of his star pupils. And he was just telling me about a couple of the guys that are in the mix that just got WWE tryouts. And in fact, on this past week's Evolve, one of them officially signed a WWE ID program. So yeah. So shout out to him, man.
Very cool. Wow. We were right to it. Well, before we get into your final rating for the show, your overall rating, I did want to give a chance for Greg to ask any questions that maybe I might have missed or anything that you were curious about to ask Adrian here about the experience.
I mean, just from your not just the Plaza itself, but like Raven himself. Like you said, he did Q&A. What was his demeanor? I mean, we've kind of seen a few things where he a little off at times, right? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
Right.
Wrestling. How was his demeanor? How was his treatment of the fans? Not that he was ever going to be rude or something, but you know, that's a different type of setting. So
no, absolutely.
Just out of curiosity.
No, he was in really good spirits overall. He was upfront and honest. He said, "Look, honestly, I didn't want to rewatch this because this was a tough watch for me. I was reliving." And in the doc, and I'll even say that in summary, but in the doc, he had to relive a lot of past traumas and past mistakes and things that, you know, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas or whatnot. So, but with all that being said, he was in very good spirits. You could tell that mentally he's in a far better place. And You know, I when it comes to his health, I didn't know he was in the early stages of Parkinson's. Like that's something that I learned not on the doc, but there in the Q&A. He just said it, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And you know, he was in as good spirits as possible, and the meet and greet. Uh, very thankful for everyone that showed up, and try to keep it light with as many people as possible while showing appreciation for them being there. And you could just tell that he was thankful that someone shout out to the director Georgie Day, I believe is his
Yes,
name.
Jordy Day. Yes.
Yeah, shout out to him for even coming up with the idea of presenting this story for the people, because it was a great one and it was very well done. I'm glad that Raven's getting his flowers. Far too often these performers aren't getting their flowers until it's too late. This was a great opportunity to show him some appreciation for the things that he's brought to professional wrestling. And I mean, I'm just glad I had to be there. I had to be there, even if I didn't know he was going to be there. Him being there was cherry on top for me.
That's cool.
Awesome. Well, that leads in perfectly into your overall grade. You know, what was the whole event experience like? What do you give it?
I gotta give it an A, man. I gotta give it an A. I think the doc is must see. I know I told y'all in the chat it's must see. It's very balanced in the sense of high points and low points. It goes back into the history of him being a fan as a kid. It goes back in the history of him being a kid, being a wrestling fanatic. And it gives the story of his journey in pro wrestling, him training, him learning how to actually wrestle, who were his inspirations, what were the wild things he was getting into in those early days. I didn't know the guy was a stripper. I didn't know the guy was a stripper in Atlanta when he moved to Atlanta to work for WCW. Like little things like that we were taught. His valet in Portland, he met her in a crack house, but she was cute.
Oh, wow.
So he asked her to be his valet. Like it's crazy stories like that. Really put together. It's entertaining. It's engaging. He's already an engaging guy. Like he's so interesting. And it's just points of him early days of WWF being a producer. And it was funny. He said that, you know, he hated the 9-to-5 life. So he would call the gym and tell him, I'm going to be at the office. Don't bother me. He would call the office and say, I'm going to be at the gym. Don't bother me. Just so no one could have taps. I mean, know where he is until noon, which is when he would wake up. And this is while he's being a producer, making six figures, basically working for Vince and all of that. So it's a unique story. It's a good character study on one of the greatest professional wrestlers, at least in our time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's also a low key love story of ECW, in my opinion. Like it gives you good points of what it was like being a fan of ECW or being a fan of pro wrestling while ECW's around. And before I leave it, there was a lasting quote that was made on there, and it was said that ECW was changing professional wrestling, but it was the ECW fans that were changing fandoms. And that's so true when we look at today's fandoms.
I'm gonna need a minute. Sorry, folks.
No, you're good.
I think you're right in the fact that you look at the ECW fans and the chants, and they're the first ones who truly brought that. They brought a fan interaction, and it was embraced. Like WWE or F at the time, or WCW, you had fan reactions. You didn't have those types of chants. You didn't have that embrace. You didn't have. It was just a difference, right?
Right.
It did change. I mean, the ECW. I love how Bubba Reyes put it before. They were the Napster. They was never going to last, but it changed how you consume music.
Right.
And that's what ECW did. It changed how you consume wrestling.
Yeah.
And it changed how you viewed it. It changed how you went to the arena. It changed the crowd experience. And I mean, if you truly think about it, Raven was a huge part of that.
Absolutely.
I honestly don't think ECW becomes what it becomes without that Raven character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feud with him and Tommy Dreamer, top 10 of all time in wrestling.
Yep. And they go in detail about that. They go in detail about his feuds, what leads up to them, and just the shenanigans of him outside of wrestling during that time are just like insane. So, I mean, it's must-see television, man. So when y'all get a chance to watch it or stream it, I know it's supposed to be streaming on Amazon Prime, I think.
Okay.
And it's in a couple select theaters. So I would say search it out, look it up, and watch it because it's good, man. And even though it's 2 hours, it doesn't feel like it's 2 hours.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Adrian, for that. And I think it's fascinating that, so many years later, we're still talking about ECW. We're still talking about these performers. And, frankly, the fact that, like you said, we can give them their flowers, and we are. I think we're, as much as we talk about the IWC, I think as true wrestling fans, we still appreciate, all the good memories that they brought us. And beyond nostalgia, I think we just see that they're such a formative part of wrestling history, but of our own fandom and how we continue to be fans.
Definitely.
So this was our In the Building report for Nevermore, The Raven Effect from the Plaza Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. So again, thank you, Adrian, for bringing us into that experience and the live event experience. This is Talk 'em in the Building. Again, check out the back catalog. We have other In the Building reports, but typically we do pro wrestling promo, and we talk about the promo, and we really dig deeply and dive back into the past, the present, and even thinking about the future. So intothebuilding.com will take you to the back catalog. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. From Adrian, from Greg, this is Adalid. Talk 'em in the Building. We'll see you.